The Vampire King was walking out of his black armored SUV when he felt something crash into his leg. He looked down, and froze. A tiny girl, no more than 5, was clutching his coat with trembling fingers. Her cheeks were streaked with tears, lips shaking, breath broken. Please," she sobbed, looking up at him with wide, terrified eyes. They're hurting my mama." His guards instantly moved in, hands on weapons. "Get her away from." "Stop." The king's voice cut through the night like a blade. He crouched down slowly, his crimson eyes softening just enough to not scare her. "Who hurt your mother?" he asked quietly. The little girl sniffed, trying not to cry harder. Men, 3 of them, they grabbed her, they said they'd take her away because she owes them." Her voice broke. "They pushed her. Mama told me to run and find help. I didn't know where to go." She looked up at him, tears dripping onto his boots. "So I came to you." The guards exchanged stunned looks. Humans didn't run toward the Vampire King, they ran from him. But this child, she clung to him like he was her last hope. For the first time in years, he felt something twist inside his chest. He reached forward and gently wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "What's your name, little one?" "Lila." "Well, Lila," he said softly, rising to his full, towering height, "take me to your mother." His eyes weren't soft anymore. They were glowing. Lila grabbed the Vampire King's hand with her tiny fingers and pulled him toward a narrow alley. His guards tried to follow, but he raised one hand without looking back. "Stay." They froze. Orders from the king were absolute. He let the child guide him, her steps fast and desperate. Every few seconds she glanced up at him, as if making sure he was still there. He was. They reached a rusted metal door behind an abandoned building. Lila pointed with a shaking hand. "They took Mama in there. I heard her scream." Her voice cracked. The king inhaled slowly, and every muscle in his body tightened. Fear. Blood. Terror. He could smell it all. He knelt again so his face was level with hers. "Lila, listen to me," he said, voice calm but edged with dark promise. "I'm going to bring your mother out. No one will hurt her again. Do you understand?" She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. But she still grabbed his sleeve. Will they hurt you too?" A low, humorless smile touched his lips. "No," he said softly. "They should worry about me." He stood, placed her gently behind him, and pushed the metal door with one hand. It didn't open. He pushed harder. The thick steel buckled inward like paper. Inside, men shouted in shock. The Vampire King stepped into the darkness, his eyes glowing blood red. And the temperature in the room seemed to drop. The room fell silent the moment the Vampire King stepped inside. 3 men froze mid-movement, their hands still gripping the woman they had dragged to the floor. Lila's mother. Bruised. Gasping. Holding her ribs as if they were broken. One of the men pointed shakily. How did he break the door?" "Shut up," another hissed. "That's the freakin' Vampire King." The third man tightened his grip on the woman's hair and yanked her upright. "Don't come closer," he shouted, voice cracking. "I swear I'll." The king raised his head slowly. And the man's words died. Those glowing crimson eyes locked onto him like a predator choosing who to kill first. "Let her go," the king said quietly. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. But the room seemed to tremble. The man holding the woman panicked and pressed a knife to her throat. "Back off. She owes us money." She. The king took one step forward. Just one. And every light in the room flickered. "She owes you nothing," he said. And if you spill even a single drop of her blood, I will peel the soul from your body and make you wish you had died before you touched her." The man swallowed, his hand shaking violently. Another guy reached for his gun. He never got the chance to pull it. The Vampire King moved, impossibly fast, and the man flew across the room, crashing into crates, gasping in terror. The others stumbled backward, realizing too late who they had provoked. Please," one stammered. The king's gaze sharpened. "Touch her again," he whispered, voice like ice. "I dare you." The knife slipped from the man's hand. The man finally released Lila's mother, shoving her forward in panic. She stumbled, collapsing to her knees, coughing as she tried to breathe. The Vampire King was beside her in an instant. His movements were soft now, as if the violence he'd shown seconds ago never existed. He slid an arm around her back, steadying her gently. "You're safe now," he said, voice low. She looked up at him, dazed, barely processing anything. Her lip was split, and a bruise was already forming along her cheekbone. Her voice came out in a whisper. "Lila, where's Lila?" "She's outside," he said, steadying her hair away from her face. "She ran to me." A single tear slipped from her swollen eye. She found you?" He nodded once. "And then?" Ma. Lila burst through the broken doorway before the guards could stop her. She sprinted across the room and threw herself into her mother's arms. The woman cried out softly, hugging her tight despite the pain. "Oh baby, oh my brave girl. I'm here. I'm okay." Lila pulled back just enough to point at the Vampire King. "Mama, he came." The woman looked up at him, and for the first time, he saw the fear in her eyes shift into something else. Relief. Trust. Hope. I didn't know who else she could run to," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You ran to the right person," he replied. Behind them, the last man tried to crawl toward the back exit. Without turning around, the king said, "Move another inch, and you'll regret surviving." The man froze. Lila clung to her mother's hand. "Can we go home now?" she asked, voice small. The king looked at the terrified men, then back at the trembling woman and child. "No," he said quietly. "You're not going home." The woman stiffened. "Why?" He stepped closer, eyes glowing faintly. "Because they know your address," he said. "And I'm not letting them near you again." The room fell into a stunned silence. Lila's mother stared up at the Vampire King, clutching her daughter protectively. What do you mean, we're not going home?" she whispered. He glanced briefly at the bruises on her arms, the fear in her eyes, the trembling in Lila's small hands. Then he looked back at the men on the floor, the ones who had dared to lay a hand on them. His jaw tightened. "I'm not leaving you in a place where humans like these can find you again," he said. "You're coming with me." The woman froze, eyes widening. "With you?" she echoed softly. Lila looked between them. "Are we in trouble?" she asked in a tiny voice. "No," the king said, softening just enough for her. "You're under my protection now." The woman tried to stand but winced sharply, grabbing her side. He was beside her instantly, offering his arm. I don't understand," she whispered. "You don't even know us." "You didn't choose to involve me," he replied. "Your daughter did." He looked down at Lila. "And I honor courage." Lila squeezed her mother's hand, nodding like she understood every word. The king turned to his guards, who were waiting at the shattered doorway. "Take these three," he ordered coldly, pointing at the men whimpering on the floor. "Separate them. Make sure they never touch another woman again." The guards bowed without a word. Lila's mother flinched at the sound of the men being dragged away. "Please," she whispered. "Don't kill them." The king paused. Then he looked at her, really looked. "You're injured," he said quietly. "Terrified. And still asking mercy for the people who hurt you." Her lips trembled, but she didn't look away. He exhaled slowly. "Fine," he said. "They live. But they'll never harm anyone again. That I promise." Lila hugged her mother tighter. The king extended his hand toward them. "Come. I'll take you somewhere safe." Her mother hesitated, only for a moment. Then she placed her hand in his. And for the first time that night, the vampire king felt the faintest spark of something unfamiliar. Something warm. The vampire king led them out of the abandoned building, keeping a steady hand near Lila's mother in case she stumbled again. His guards stood outside, alert, watching every shadow. The moment Lila stepped into the cool night air, she clung to her mother's side and whispered, "Mama, can we go somewhere bright? I don't like the dark." Her mother stroked her hair gently, though her hand shook. "We will, sweetheart, we will." The king opened the door of his black SUV himself, something he never did, and helped the injured woman inside, guiding her carefully so she wouldn't aggravate her ribs. Lila climbed in after her, still holding her mother's sleeve. The king paused at the door, eyes scanning the street. No threats. No lingering danger. Only then did he step inside. The door shut with a heavy thud. Lila looked up at him from her seat, her small voice breaking the silence. "Are you really gonna protect us? For real?" He met her gaze, those innocent, tear-blotched eyes. "Yes," he said without hesitation. "I gave you my word." The SUV pulled away, smooth and silent. Lila's mother leaned her head back with a shaky exhale. "I still can't believe this," she murmured. "You, of all people, helping us." He didn't look away from her. "You needed help," he said simply. "And your daughter came to me." Lila rested her head in her mother's lap, finally letting exhaustion pull at her eyelids. The king watched her for a moment. So small. So fragile. Yet she had run straight into the den of the most feared being in the city, for her mother. "You're taking us somewhere safe," the woman whispered, still unsure. "But where exactly?" He shifted his gaze to her. "To my estate," he said. "No one who hurt you will ever cross that threshold." Her breath caught. That's too much. "We're strangers." "You're not strangers anymore," he interrupted softly. "You're under my protection. And that isn't temporary." Her eyes widened a little at that. He looked out the tinted window, the lights of the city passing in streaks. "Rest," he said gently. "You're safe with me now." And for the first time since the nightmare began. The woman closed her eyes and actually believed it. The SUV rolled past iron gates taller than most buildings Lila had ever seen. Black steel. Reinforced. Guarded by sentinels who didn't look entirely human. The gates opened before the king even spoke, as if the metal itself obeyed him. Lila pressed her face to the window, whispering, "Mama, it's like a castle." Her mother was half awake, voice barely above a breath. "A very big, very safe castle." The king glanced back at them. "Welcome to my home." The estate unfolded like something out of a forgotten world, towering stone walls, glowing lanterns, long marble steps leading to doors carved with symbols older than any language Lila knew. The SUV stopped. Before anyone else could move, the king opened his door, circled around, and lifted Lila's mother into his arms. She gasped softly, instinctively clutching his shirt. "I can walk," she murmured, embarrassed and fragile. "No," he said simply. "You've done enough. Let me." Lila scampered behind them, trying to keep up with their pace. Two guards opened the massive doors, their heads bowed. Inside, Warm light spilled over polished floors and velvet drapes. It didn't feel cold or dark like the stories told about vampires. It felt safe. A woman in a white coat stepped forward immediately. "Your Majesty," she said, bowing. "I've prepared the infirmary, just as you ordered." Lila blinked. Her mother whispered weakly. Doctor?" "Another one who owes me more than a lifetime," the king replied, walking deeper into the estate. He laid Lila's mother gently onto a medical bed. The doctor examined her quickly, eyes sharpening with concern. "3 fractured ribs, deep bruising, and she's dangerously dehydrated," she muttered. "She needs rest. And food. And protection." Lila stood frozen at the doorway, her little hands balled into fists. Is my mama gonna be okay?" she asked in a trembling voice. The doctor smiled gently. "She's going to be just fine, sweetheart." Lila's knees finally gave out in relief. She covered her face with both hands and sobbed, the kind of sobs she had held in for far too long. The king knelt beside her. Her tears slowed when she felt his presence, strong and unshakable. "Lila," he said quietly, using her name for the first time. "You were brave tonight. Braver than most adults I've ever known." She looked up at him, cheeks wet. "But I was so scared." He brushed a tear from her face with the back of his knuckle. "Courage," he said, "is being terrified, and running anyway." The doctor approached him. "She needs rest too," the woman said softly. The king nodded, then scooped Lila up, just as carefully as he had lifted her mother. Her small arms instinctively wrapped around his neck. "Can I stay close to Mama?" she whispered sleepily. "You'll sleep in the room next to hers," he said. "And I'll be right outside the door." Her eyes fluttered. "Promise." He held her a little tighter. "I never break my promises." And for the first time in days, Lila fell asleep. Safe in the arms of a monster the whole city feared. A monster who, somehow, cared more deeply than any hero ever could. The Vampire King led the trembling mother and her little girl through the dim hallway of the ruined building. His guards fanned out ahead of them, clearing every corner with silent, predatory precision. Lila clung to her mother's waist now, refusing to let go. Her mother walked with a slight limp, each breath sharp with pain, but she kept her arm protectively around her daughter. Where are you taking us?" she asked, voice unsteady. "To the castle," he replied without slowing. The castle?" Her voice cracked with disbelief. "My territory," he clarified. "The safest place in the city. No one enters without my permission. Not even death itself." The woman swallowed. "Why would you help us so much? We're nothing to you." He stopped walking. Turned. And for the first time since the night began, his expression softened, not for dramatic effect, not for intimidation. But because of the small girl staring up at him with tired, swollen eyes. "You're not nothing," he said quietly. "Your daughter came to me for help. That makes you under my protection." The woman blinked, tears gathering again, but not from fear this time. Behind them, a guard approached. "My king," he said, lowering his voice. "The attackers are secured. All 7. Waiting for your orders." Lila stiffened, clutching her mother tighter. The king's eyes darkened, glowing faintly red. "Good," he said. "Prepare the interrogation chamber." Her mother flinched. Please, don't kill them. I don't want more blood because of me." The king studied her. "After what they did to you?" His voice dipped dangerously low. She shook her head. "I just want peace. For my daughter. For our home." Lila tugged his sleeve. A small hand on a terrifying creature of the night. "Please don't be mad," she whispered. something in him shifted. Like a storm breaking. The glow faded from his eyes, replaced with a slow, steady breath. He knelt down so he was eye level with Lila. "Little one," he said quietly, "I'm not angry with you." But your eyes glowed again," she said, worried. He exhaled softly. "I glow when I'm protecting someone." Lila blinked. Like a superhero?" A tiny, reluctant smile ghosted across his lips. "Something like that." Her mother watched the exchange, stunned. The king rose to his full height again. "To the castle," he ordered. "Get them food, warm clothes, and a healer." Then he added, more to himself than to anyone else. "And bring the prisoners to the lower hall. There are questions I need answered before sunrise." As they stepped out into the cold night, Lila looked back at the destroyed street. "Will the bad men come again?" she whispered. The king placed a protective hand on her shoulder. "No," he said, voice like iron. "They'll never touch you or your mother again." He glanced toward the van carrying the captured attackers. "They won't have the chance." The Vampire King's castle rose out of the darkness like something carved from night itself, tall spires, black stone walls, windows glowing with a faint crimson hue. It was ancient, imposing, and somehow comforting, wrapped in layers of magic older than the city. As the gates opened, Lila held her mother's hand tighter. "It's huge," she whispered. Her mother swallowed, stunned by the sight, bruised face pale in the moonlight. "It looks like a fortress." "It is," the king replied. "And tonight, it's your sanctuary." Guards bowed as he passed, dropping their weapons across their chests in a salute. Not a single pair of eyes drifted toward the injured woman or her child, because the king's presence alone was warning enough. "These two are under my protection. Touch them, and die." Inside, warmth replaced the icy night. The healers immediately rushed to the mother. "Come," one said gently. "We need to tend to your wounds." The woman hesitated, looking back at the king. Lila tugged her hand. "Mama, it's okay. He wouldn't let anyone hurt us." The king gave a small, reassuring nod. "You'll be safe. Go." As the healers guided her away, Lila stayed frozen where she stood, unsure. "Go with her," the king said softly. Lila shook her head. "No. I want to stay with you." That startled him, though he hid it well. "Why?" he asked. She fidgeted with the hem of her shirt. "Because, you look like you need someone with you." Silence hit the hall. Even his guards exchanged glances, unsure if the king would lash out or laugh. But he did neither. Instead, something in his expression cracked, the faintest break in that ancient armor he wore around his heart. "You're a strange little human," he murmured. Lila shrugged. "You saved Mama. That means you're good." Before he could respond, the heavy doors at the other end of the hall opened. Tony, the king's second-in-command, stepped forward with a bow. "My king. The prisoners are ready." The air changed instantly. Warmth vanished, replaced by a cold, lethal stillness. He looked down at Lila. "Stay with the guard. I'll return soon." But she didn't let go of his hand. "No," she whispered. "I want to know why they hurt Mama." The king hesitated. In the entire castle, he was the most feared being alive, and yet this tiny child had him unsure for the first time in centuries. He crouched down. "Lila, what you'll see may frighten you." She looked into his glowing eyes. "I was already scared tonight," she said softly. "Nothing scarier than that." And just like that, something in him yielded. He rose. "Fine. Stay close to me. Do not look away unless I tell you." Lila nodded and gripped his cloak. He gave the signal. The doors to the judgment hall swung open. Inside, torches blazed against old stone walls. Chains rattled. The 7 captured attackers were tied to thick iron posts, bruised, furious, terrified. Their eyes widened when they saw the vampire king enter, and then widened further when they saw the little girl hiding behind his leg. One of the men spat at the floor. "You brought a kid? What kind of freak are you?" The king didn't react. But his guards did, stepping forward, ready to end the man's life. The king raised one hand. Silence. He walked slowly toward the prisoners, voice calm, almost conversational. "You attacked a mother," he said. "Beat her until she couldn't scream. Forced her daughter to watch." He reached them and stopped inches from the ringleader. "You should pray," he said softly, "that she survives." The man barked a laugh, though it trembled. "You think we're scared of a bloodsucker?" The king leaned forward. "No," he whispered. "I think you're too stupid to realize you should be." Lila tugged his cloak again, her voice tiny. "Why did they do it? Mama never hurt anyone." The king turned slightly, angling his body so she stayed hidden from the worst of the scene. "That," he said, eyes returning to the prisoner, "is what I intend to find out." He stepped back. "Bring the truth spell." A cold hush fell over the room. The prisoners paled. "No, no, not that, please." But it was too late. The guards carried a silver bowl etched with runes, glowing faintly with ancient magic. Lila shivered. "Is this going to hurt them?" she asked quietly. The king looked down at her. "Only if they lie." The guards placed the silver bowl on a stone pedestal. Its runes pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat trapped inside metal. The prisoners froze, because every criminal in the city knew that bowl. A truth spell forged by an ancient vampire coven. It didn't torture. It didn't injure. It exposed every lie. Every intention. Every secret they wished had stayed buried. The king folded his arms. "Bring the first one." 2 guards dragged the ringleader forward, chains clinking against the stone floor. His knees hit the ground hard. Lila peeked from behind the king's cloak, her small fingers gripping the fabric. The man trembled as one of the guards dipped a silver rod into the glowing liquid. A faint hiss echoed. "Speak," the king commanded. The rod was pressed against the man's chest. He screamed, not from pain, but because the magic surged through his body like a spotlight forcing everything hidden into the open. The glowing markings crawled across his skin, revealing each lie in red, each truth in silver. The king's voice was calm, cold. "Why did you attack her? Why that house?" The man's mouth snapped open against his will, the truth forcing itself out. "It wasn't random," he gasped. "We were paid to hit her shop." Lila stiffened. "Her mother, targeted?" The king's eyes narrowed. "Who paid you?" The magic illuminated the man's throat. He tried to resist, but the spell tore the truth free. "A vampire," the man choked. "One of yours." The hall froze. Every guard turned. Even the torches seemed to flicker in shock. The king went still. "A vampire. From his own ranks." Lila tugged at his cloak again. "A vampire? Like you?" He didn't answer. Not because he didn't want to. But because his instincts were shifting, sharpening, turning deadly. "Which vampire?" he asked, voice dangerously low. The man cried out as the spell forced him to speak. "Lord Avalon," he said the woman knew something she shouldn't. The king's jaw clenched. Lord Avalon. A noble. A powerful one. A traitor. The second prisoner was dragged forward before the king even asked. The spell touched his skin. He screamed. And the truth spilled out. She saw him. She saw him feeding, in the alley by her shop, she saw him drain a man. Avalon panicked, he said she had to disappear. The king's eyes erupted in a cold, ancient fury. Lila's mother had witnessed a vampire murder. And the vampire who committed it tried to silence her forever. Bring another, the king said. The next man collapsed before even reaching the pedestal. Yes, it's true, he sobbed. Avalon said no human could see a noble feeding. He offered us gold to handle her. We didn't know the kid was there, we didn't. Lila flinched. The king placed a steady hand on her shoulder. It wasn't your fault, he murmured. None of this was your fault. The room fell silent again. Until Lila whispered. Is Mama in danger because of him? The king exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that came before ancient vengeance. Yes, he said softly. But she's under my roof now. No one will touch her. A guard stepped forward. My king, what are your orders for the traitor? The king's eyes glowed a deep, furious crimson. Bring Avalon to the throne chamber, he said. Tonight. The prisoners trembled as guards moved them back against the wall. The king turned, and lifted Lila gently into his arms. You need to see your mother, he said. She buried her head against his shoulder. Is she okay? She's alive, he said. And she's safe. But inside, fire churned through him. A vampire noble attempted to kill a human mother. Because she saw his crime. And a 7-year-old girl had run 12 blocks through darkness because she had no one else to trust. Until she found him. He tightened his hold around her. This was no longer just protection. This was war. The king didn't wait another second. He scooped the trembling little girl into his arms and sped through the long corridors, every torch on the wall flickering violently as he passed, his speed too fast for mortal eyes, his fury thick enough to choke the air. Hold on to me, he said softly. She clutched his cloak tighter. When he reached the great hall where the guards had reported the intruders, the scent hit him first, fear, blood, and a mother's desperate heartbeat fading too fast. His jaw tightened. He pushed the doors open with one hand. Inside, the girl's mother was on the floor, bruised, struggling to breathe while 2 men loomed over her. The moment they saw him, they froze. Everyone did. The vampire king didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You hurt a woman under my protection, he said quietly, every word echoing through the hall like thunder. You frightened her child. His eyes glowed crimson, slowly, dangerously. The men dropped their weapons, shaking. The king stepped forward, setting the little girl gently on her feet. Stay behind me, he whispered to her. Then he lifted one hand. Just one. The torches flared bright white as a massive wave of power swept across the room, slamming the attackers to the ground with a force they couldn't fight, couldn't even comprehend. They screamed. He didn't blink. You will not touch her again. The girl's mother tried to lift her head, whispering, Your Majesty. I didn't mean for her to come. He knelt beside her instantly, his voice softening. I'm glad she did. You are safe now. The little girl wrapped her tiny arms around her mom, crying into her shoulder as the king rose to his full height again. This time, he wasn't calm. This time, he was every inch the ruler of the night. Guards, he said coldly. Take them away. The hall trembled. The guards dragged the attackers out, their screams fading down the stone corridor until there was nothing left but silence, and the faint sound of the little girl's sobs. The vampire king exhaled slowly, letting the last of his rage settle. Then he turned back toward the shaken mother and her child. She was trying to sit up, even though every breath hurt her. Don't move, he said gently, kneeling beside her again. His voice, softer than anyone would believe a king like him could speak. My lord, she whispered, her eyes wet, I didn't want trouble. You are not trouble, he interrupted firmly. Being threatened in your own home is. He touched 2 fingers lightly to her shoulder. A warm silver glow spread from his hand, soft, soothing, nothing like the power he'd unleashed moments earlier. Her breathing steadied. Her pain began to ease. The little girl looked up at him with wide eyes. You're helping Mama? He offered her a faint, rare smile. Yes. I will not let anyone hurt her again. Her tiny hand reached out and grabbed his cloak. Thank you, King. Something unfamiliar tugged at his chest. He rose slowly, his cloak sweeping the floor like a shadow. Both of you will stay in my protection until I say otherwise, he declared, quiet, but absolute. There was no argument, no hesitation. His word was law. The mother's eyes widened. But, Your Majesty, our home. Your home will be guarded, he assured her. You, however, must recover. And your daughter should never have to run through the night crying for help again. The girl hugged her mother tighter, relief finally sinking in. The king watched them for a long moment, 2 fragile humans, clinging to each other, before gesturing to his attendants. Prepare a chamber for them, he ordered. And send for the royal healer. As they were escorted out, the little girl looked back over her shoulder. And the king, he inclined his head to her. Just slightly. A promise. The vampire king watched the mother and daughter disappear down the corridor, safe for now. But something wasn't sitting right. Those men weren't bold enough to attack on their own. Someone sent them. And that someone had dared to strike inside his territory. He turned sharply. Summon the guard captain, he ordered. Within seconds, the captain bowed before him. Your Majesty. The men who attacked the woman, the king said quietly, interrogate them. Now. The captain hesitated. They're terrified, sire. They claim they acted on orders. Whose orders? The king demanded. The captain swallowed. An exile. A rogue vampire. A cold silence filled the hall. The king's jaw tightened. Of course. The one who had been testing his patience for months, lurking in shadows, gathering followers. The king didn't wait another heartbeat. Prepare my armor, he said, his voice low. And lock down the castle. No one gets near the girl and her mother. He was already walking away, cloak trailing behind him like a storm. Tonight, someone was going to pay. The rogue vampire was cornered inside an abandoned outpost, surrounded by the king's guards. But when the king arrived, everything fell silent. The rogue smirked as he stepped into torchlight. Well, did the little human girl run to you? How adorable. The king's eyes glowed blood red. She came to me because you attacked her mother. Oh, please, the rogue sneered. Humans are toys. She was in my way. The air around the king cracked with raw power. You hurt a mother, he said, stepping forward. You frightened her child. You trespassed in my domain. He stopped inches from the rogue. And for that, you will answer to me. The rogue lunged, fast, but the king was faster. He caught him by the throat, slamming him against the wall with bone-shattering force. You think I don't see your games? The king growled. You send cowards to attack a defenseless woman? You threaten a child? The rogue choked, claws scraping at the king's grip. I'll finish what I started, he hissed. The mother, she should have died. The king's fury detonated. The torches exploded into white flame as he crushed the rogue to the ground with supernatural force. You will never touch her again. The rogue screamed. And then, silence. The king stood over the fallen attacker, breathing hard, his rage slowly ebbing. This threat was over. But he knew the child would be waiting, terrified he might not return. He turned, cloak swirling behind him. I'm going back. The king returned to the castle as dawn approached, the sky still dark enough to welcome him. The little girl was waiting in the corridor outside the healing chamber, clutching her mother's cloak, eyes puffy from crying. The moment she saw him, she ran. Not in fear. In relief. She threw her tiny arms around his leg. You came back. You really came back. The king froze. Slowly, he knelt to her height. I told you, he said softly, I would protect your mother. Her eyes glistened. Is the bad man gone? He will never hurt you again, the king said firmly. She gave a shaky breath, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. Thank you, king. Her small voice broke something inside him. Before he could respond, the mother stepped out of the chamber, weak but standing. Your Majesty, you saved us. Twice. He met her gaze, strong, steady, commanding. I don't let harm come to those under my protection. She lowered her head. You have our eternal gratitude. The king looked at the two of them, fragile, frightened, but safe now. And for the first time in centuries, something softened in his chest. You both will remain here, he declared. As long as you need. No one will lay a hand on either of you. The girl smiled through her tears. Then, we're safe. The king placed a hand gently on her head. You're safe, he said. From this night, no one will ever hurt you again. The mother exhaled, finally letting her fear go. The girl hugged him once more. And the vampire king, ruler of darkness, feared by all, let her. Because tonight, he hadn't just protected his kingdom. He had protected a family.